Now, welcome. Wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us here today for this breakout session. We have about 40 minutes right now to have a conversation and discussion around what we just heard. I will be your facilitator for this session, which means I will guide the conversation to a certain degree. But overall, it's up to you, Dr. Künkel, and to you, Mrs. Lü, to decide what you would like to speak about, the questions you would like to address, and where you would like to end up with. So I'm handing over to both of you to guide us through the session, and I will be here as your support.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, Joanna, so we didn't communicate beforehand, which route we would take, but I do think the first part that I would like to bring in, that was just coming from the session just now, is, let's say, if the new North Star or the new Southern Cross of our future economic architecture would be anything that is around life support systems, and that could be social and ecological. So not just the planetary boundaries, but also the social kind of safe operating space, or the aliveness, in social settings. If it's life enhancing, flourishing, if vitality plays a new role, what would this mean in concrete for the way we operate? And, it's quite interesting, Joanna, that you said, I have a business model that actually takes that at the center. I think that for me, that would be the first question, because we are operating in an environment where this is definitely not the North Star. It's definitely not the guiding issue. And what would this mean for our day-to-day way of how business operates, how governments operate, how NGOs operate, etc.? That would be the question that I would like to bring in.
Dr. Kennel, this is Clara. Do you mind I spend a few minutes just to translate this for Joanna?
Absolutely.
Sorry, guys. So let me just give me a few minutes. Joanna, 刚才Dr. Petra Krenel 说到，就是刚才的话题当中呢，我们有讲到这个就是关于我们新的 North Star New Star， 就是我们新的这个指南针，类似指南针这样的东西呢，是关于要去加强生命力的，就社会的角度来讲，这个生命力的，所以他也很喜欢你谈到的在深圳的这个商业模式，你们在做的这个事情。那么现在要谈的就是说，有了这么的这个 North Star 之后呢，对于我们来讲意味着什么？对于比如说 business， 对于这个企业来讲，对于政府来讲，对于 NGO 来讲，这意味着什么？这就是接下来可能我们要谈的话题。OK， 这样可以吗？OK, please go on. Sorry.
Wonderful. So, Dr. Künkel, would you mind to just quickly recapture your question, since we also have a new joiner? And then maybe we can take a round also of comments on what people think and have perceived.
So my question, let's say, if we take as a new North Star, life support as a new North Star for economic behavior, for economic models, economic activities, etc. And that could be vitality, aliveness, systems aliveness, flourishing. I mean, there are many, many words that are flying around. If that would be the new North Star, what would it mean in the way we do business, in the way we governments operate, in the way we kind of operate even in civil society, in research, in kind of communities, etc.? What would the practical implications be?
I do love your question, because it is immediately triggering in me a counter question, which is, how will we make a living if this is the ultimate North Star we are following, right? Because now everything is driven by making money, as we discussed before. And I'm just thinking, so that somehow would have needs to be secured for me, so I can have a different North Star here for me. It's just what comes to my mind very spontaneously. How about the others?
I'm struggling a bit, because it's so huge and simple at the same time. what is the new North Star? Yeah, okay. The question which is working in me is what was leading us in the past centuries. So, and what has led us was the enormous success of cutting work into little process steps and make this very profitable. So, and this has become a kind of a religion in my eyes. Cutting pieces into cutting work and also thoughts into smaller pieces, and working on the smaller pieces is set equal to success. And questioning this and saying, no, the world is complex, and this equation doesn't work anymore, is the challenge for me, because people are believing in this simple breakdown. So what is the new North Star would be I don't have a solution or an answer to that, but would leave me to the question, is complexity reducible? And I think not. So how do we get people in accepting complexity more is the new North Star. So giving people self-consciousness that they can cope with complexity because they can, but they have never learned and have never used it.
I'm rearranging my thoughts on that. Good point with the splitting of work in so small pieces. But I think that was not bad. So
No.
It was not bad.
No.
But maybe we have lost to teach that in interconnection. So I can be a specialist, of course, and I should be perhaps. But there should be some one day in the week where I look on all those other things around me for the whole thing. And I think we have lost to look on the whole structure. We are put it in the small work piece. And that we demand leaders to do that in the business case now. How do you say, firm organization? So we demand leaders are for that, but that's a thing that don't work, I think.
Yeah, that's I agree. So we simplified too much, and we concentrated only on the simple things and neglected complexity, which is existing and doesn't go away.
Well, then we are on the topic on how to teach complexity. Oh, wait, there's a seminar. Yeah.
Barbara.
No, I think I like the idea of that we need a new North Star and that we need a new narrative, and that has to be engaging and motivating. And teaching people complexity is not very motivating because they already step out when they hear the word. So I really like the idea of a new narrative that is more into life economics or life enhancing, or because life is something we all share. And to secure that and to do things towards that, I think that's important to everybody. And to put this into a good narrative, that seems to me quite important. And I just asked myself, I think Petra, you in your keynote, you said that we also in Germany we have balance sheets that already go into the direction, but nobody knows about that. And I was sort of, why don't we make this more public? I mean, because it's part of the narrative.
Absolutely. We do have well-being indicators in Germany. I must say, I also wasn't aware of that for a while until I got into the well-being economy issues and the governments of Finland and Iceland and Scotland, who do have well-being economy indicators. We do have. They are developed in a participatory process in Germany, and if they're published, you can look them up on the internet. But who cares? So that's quite interesting. And the interesting thing, Robert, I'm fully with you. The complexity is going to be the new norm. So dealing with complexity is something, wow, I remember when I did ran leadership development programs 20 years ago in the United States. Then it was really a new topic, and we had this phenomenal graph, where we would say how much complexity can you actually cope with before you decide. And then this was trying to help people to understand that they tend to decide very quickly without actually opening up the complexity. And that simple graph helped people to really say, okay, so we don't need to become researchers. They go up with complexity and complexity and complexity before they make a decision. But we need to widen, our skill of being able to cope with complexity. I think it is definitely the new norm. But what I think is important, and that's why for me the issue around life enhancement or vitality, systems vitality, is so important, because it's a new narrative. And I believe that it is possible to translate this narrative, because the narrative needs to be translated. If it's just life enhancement, okay, so does it mean we're all going to be happy all the time? No. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of negotiation around this. But if I translate this into the corporate environment, then you can immediately think about to combine what we've already learned in the last 15 years on sustainability strategies. You can combine it with science-based target on climate emissions. You can combine it with sustainability strategies on responsible value chains. You can combine it with lots of stuff. And so there is a mix between a regulatory environment that needs to be guided by the new North Star, and a voluntary environment that is up for the creative innovation also of business leaders. And so you need both. However, you will at some stage kind of knock against the wall, and it is the wider structures that you're operating in. Because I have a lot of experience in business, in responsible value chains, and there are so many companies, particularly in the textile or cocoa or coffee sector. They say, they scream for government regulations, because unless they do have the government regulations, they don't operate on a level playing field. So it means that if one company goes ahead with sustainability issues, but another company doesn't, then the competitive environment and everything is based on a competitive environment. So you fall into the structures, that you can't change. But I don't think sustainability strategies towards life enhancement are wrong. They are part of the deal, but they need to be complemented by strongly, let's say, by I would say really societal narratives that change, but also by really guiding structures and guiding regulations that are hopefully agreed upon also in a democratic way. This is my issue around China, Joanna, where I have the feeling, is this really a consensus, kind of a negotiated consensus in a society, whether it is a fully democratic way or not. So I do think we need both. And if I just take the example of a small scale company, like a farmer in northern Germany, the issue of life enhancement has a lot of connotations. It can be translated into land management, because you would just from using the land, you would move to land stewardship. you would suddenly go into details of measurements and say, what's the quality of the soil, and are you maintaining or enhancing the quality of the soil? What about your natural environment? How are you embedded in the landscape? What are the forests in the area? What are the birds, etc.? You suddenly would have a totally different responsibility if you make this a new North Star, life support systems. But then again, it's not going to be the single farmer who's going to make a difference. So you need to take regional approaches. So I'm just kind of throwing in things where I say, actually, I think it's possible. So I don't know if you have ideas of how this new North Star could be translated, into practical things.
Clara， 我其实想问问他，就是说，我们今天虽然把 life economy 定义为是个经济学，但它不是那种传统意义上正统科学。就是如果我们想要达成一致，把它推向一个真正的高峰，那我们应该做什么，对吧？他们作为学者，他们可以理论建构，那我们作为实践者来说，我们怎么能合作，让这个东西快速成为一种被大众也好，专业人士都是争相去追逐的一个就是正统科学，这是第一个问题。第二个问题就是说，关于就是我们今天讨论的这些东西啊，就是我觉得其实目前为止大家都还只是说一些想法，我们能不能说有一些针对性的困难，就是像我们目前在社区里边，就是说我们能构成一些相互印证啊，然后推动这个事情真正的往前去的。我问一下，就是说我们是否能够有一些 cooperation 这两个问题吧，就直接问他本人。
Okay, so I'm translating for Joanna. So Joanna is actually raising a question. Actually, two questions. She's a businesswoman, so she's actually doing this. And I think you all heard about her practice of establishing this economic her company 林可有 where she offer jobs to mothers. So this is a business economy based on community, relationship, care, motherhood. So she actually raised two questions. Her first question is, as someone who is doing this, she also needs advice from experts, like experts who study this economic model, experts who can provide some kind of guiding principles so that she can take this guiding principle. She can take these guiding principles, some proven principles, if there are something like this. Her second question is, she's doing this, and I can tell because I've been helping her, looking at her model, and I think she's alone. She and her partners are a kind of group of lonely people exploring this in the darkness. So she wants to know if there's some similar practices going on around the world, and there are kind of collaboration or evaluation that people can do together to find a kind of more established model similar to what she's doing, or challenging what she's doing, ways that she can borrow, examples she can borrow, she can refer to. Yeah. Any thoughts from people here? Yes, Stephen.
Hello. Thank you for the time we're sharing right now. Interestingly, there are many examples I think, so I'm aware of, and they are currently emerging, I would rather say, in the niche markets. Some leading examples, especially for China, I know from Africa, Africa, the year of Ubuntu right now. They are very much concentrating on two main drivers. One is the neighborhood or the local economy. And the second is also the women who play a major role in this neighborhood economics. And there is another one from India as well, where it's quite similar. But then there are also initiatives right now in the midst of Europe, some in the US, and they're also concentrating on neighborhoods, but not on the rural side, but on the city side. And there, especially the donut economics became quite feasible through an initiative they have founded together with biomimicry and others called the Donut Economy Action Lab. You can look that up on the internet. And they also have for free resources for the guiding principles, the design processes, and also the metrics that they are using. But most of the metrics are also part of a process where there is this negotiation that Petra, Künkel referred to. So part of the design process is a negotiation process about the questions of what the community considers as the quality of life for living and what is life enhancing. Very contextualized, which is beautiful, I think. Still, in a larger frame of a global consensus, in a way. And the global consensus is about the two things also Petra Künkel has referred to, the social safety space, and but also the planetary boundaries. It is in their narrative, but it is about the biological safety space for not only the current, but then also for the future generations. So this seems, for me, at least for the moment, one of the most inclusive approaches. And what I also can share is my personal experience that, interestingly, especially, and also referring again to Petra Künkel, with the small and medium enterprises, it is easier, interestingly, to work in this direction. And not because of complexity and all this, and I'm coming from the field, so I really need to kind of step back here when I work with small and medium enterprises, but because of their value system, which is based quite on conservative values, like the family, which is intergenerational, the connectedness to nature, which is then mostly expressed also with a connectedness to some divine. So there is some also religious background, whatever the then cultural or social cultural context might be. So it's not like one, there could be many. But to have this direct experience of oneself in connection to the world, which includes biological world, nature, and also the social world, which is first the family and then the neighborhood, and the direct experience makes it much more easier to frame the North Star, if you like this one, North Star. I find it very difficult when it comes to larger entities. So working also with large companies, we try to implement, for instance, the SDGs as a North Star system. But this can get very complicated, not complex. And I find it super exhausting working with governments and governmental departments. It's, for me, in my personal experience, there is a complete lack of the experience of those who are in responsibility of whatever the issues are, and those who are actually living the issues. And I would be also then interested if you have any experience how to kind of reconnect and a little bit closing this gap, if you have any experience, because it seems as larger as the entities become, the lesser people are directly connected to whatever their responsibility is. And without that connection, how should anybody make conscious decision? You know, if I have no life experience, how can I decide in favor of life?
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. So let me just translate for Joanna. So if she has any further questions.所以 Joanna 刚才Stephen 分享了一些例子啊，就是在非洲、在印度、在印度和在美国呢，其实都有类似的那种 community based 这种社区型的社区经济模型。然后刚才Petra Dr. Petra Connor 已经在那个 chat 里面分享了一个网站啊，你把它上面有相关的资料。
我有看到他写的那个 donut economics .org 是吗？
是的。然后 Stephen 的经验就是，这个我们在做这种community 的这种经济的时候呢，也特别要留意 community 本身的一些 value， 他们的这个价值观系统，就是他们到底重视什么。比如说跟自然界的关系啊，跟人跟人之间关系啊，甚至宗教的部分。按他自己的经验来讲呢，就是我们一定要有一个第一手的资料，对于 community 的第一手资料。如果没有这个第一手资料的话，你是没有办法去实现那个生命丰富的那种，真正做到这种有生命力的那种经济在里面的。所以跟到那个 community 的那种直接的关系是非常非常重要的。但是他也觉得就是跟政府来做是非常非常困难的一件事情。大概是这样子，所以你留意一下他那个网站的内容。
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Stephen, for your advice.
There's a cat eating food. Whose cat is it?
I do have an example for a social entrepreneurship and here in Germany, but they only have a German website, and I'm trying to get it through Google Translate to English, and then I put it on the chat, so as an example.
Thank you, Robert. Robert 说在德国也有类似的这样的一些做法，然后但是他是用德语的，所以他想翻译成英语，然后放到那个 chat 里面，你留意一下。
好的，可以。
May I bring in another question that refers back to Robert, what you've been saying, that we have a long tradition. I mean, I've been taking deep dive also in the feminist her story history and looking at how the thinking developed, that actually helped us to dissect, and to become more and more linear and more rational. And the issue is what you're saying, our expertise and putting, let's say, cutting down complexity into small pieces, and that enabled a lot of science, it enabled a lot of industrial development. It honestly also enabled a lot of societal development, and it enabled technological development. So we don't want to, as you usually say, throw out the baby with the bath water. However, it is almost like off track. It just went off track in a way that I do think what is required is a really thorough rebalancing, and that's why I say it's more than overcoming patriarchy, because if we keep walking in this direction, we keep throwing spanners into our own path, and yet at the same time, there is no reason to abolish our advancements, be they technical or social or political or whatever. But my question that I would like to throw in, if you had, if you had to say, these are the three things that I would like to keep from the current economic system, Yeah, I would like to keep them, please. Yeah, so let's not abolish them. What would you, we're talking so much about the criticism of the economic system, but what would you like to keep? Anything that comes to your mind? What are the 3 things that you say, yes, please, let's keep it?
If I may, the first thing I would like to keep is so-called social mobility. And unfortunately, it is coupled to economics. So that social mobility means that someone has been born in a particular context of social, let's call it as it was in the past, class. So can actually be free through education and other social inventions to overcome the social constraints by birth. So that I would like to keep. And second, I would like to keep, and that might also be quite strange, but it's social welfare. So unfortunately, social welfare is also coupled with economic and also with this word we don't want to say, and that is growth paradigm. Unfortunately coupled. So, and the third would be worker rights, as they also have been developed. First, because it was a cause in industrialized society to think about worker rights and to save them. But these are things that I find very important. Because we're losing right now, for instance, a lot of, they're not called workers' rights anymore, but employee rights through the gig economy, for instance, and also through other means of social structure destruction patterns when it comes to economics. These would be my 3.
May I add? So, if I get the question right, a nice question, what do you want to keep? Keep from the point as it now is. And then I say social welfare as an idea, yes. But as the system now, no. Because we need, like the BGE, how do you say, bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen. So we need to change on those 3 things you said. We need to change their things as well. And perhaps we don't need worker rights if we have the right North Star, because it's then a principle that don't need even rules set up. But interesting questions. I don't know. Money? No, I don't want money. I don't want to keep anything.
All that.
To the point Stefan raised with the workers' rights. My point of view is that the workers' rights are a consequence of the what I already mentioned, cutting work into small pieces and reducing one person only to execute one part, and therefore, taking rights away because it's only minor work has been done by one person, so he has no right to have an influence. I think what I expect for the future, what I see, what will come is companies have to more align with the needs of their employees, and therefore worker rights and the negotiation of these worker rights, they had quite sharp profiles of the employee and the employer. So they had a basis for negotiations. And this is dissolving at the moment. So complexity is pathing the way to future. And therefore it will be much difficult to negotiate that in the future. I think it will not be necessary, but Petra asked for what would you keep, and what I would like to keep is I really much appreciate the functions and develop the functions of a market has. A market is really good in allocating resources, not in the very strict and harmful way markets has been done in the future, and so without no regulations at all. So this is becoming then an absurd way of ausbeuten, so
Exploitation.
Exploit other people. This is not what I want. What I want is the real good functions a market is delivering, if it works. So, and this is then also contributing to what Hans said with the social welfare. So I can have a good working market which is allocating resources very properly to where it's most efficient, and I do have accompanying regulations, as you said, Petra. This is necessary. I totally agree to that. This is necessary to have the regulations for all, because the whole thing is just playing a game. So this whole game needs rules. If there are no rules, it's anarchy. So we are committing to have a democratic society, which is using market as a rule with rules, and we are at the moment redefining the rules.
Thank you. And before we close, I would just like to give in a little challenge as well. So Petra, when you were asking what would you like to keep from the current economic system that we have, for me, living in a rich country, definitely the abundance that we have, the freedom of choice of products, what is all available. I mean, that's something I think we here take for granted.
Right.
As everything is there. But if you ask me, I don't want to eat cabbage all winter long because that's the only vegetable that can be stored here. So it's sometimes also for us, we are discussing a lot, but sometimes it's the little things, thinking about life realities of people. And here I am thinking there is actually something at stake as long as we are talking about these reduction narratives that we have currently, right? Wherever a good future is linked to reducing what we are doing instead of having a positive attitude to it, something that I'm craving for, that I want to go to, just so from my perspective.
May I ask Petra what her 3 things are?
And that could be, if I just may interrupt here, a very great concluding statement for this first round of breakouts. So you also get to have a little break before we start the second round. Thank you.
Okay, my 3 things. My 3 things is probably a repetition of some. It's interesting tax systems, and I find it quite interesting because if we start what you would like to keep, you immediately start thinking about how you would like to change that exactly what you would like to keep. Yeah, so I think tax systems need to be changed, but the principle of tax, is extremely important. I would change them into paying dividends for the social and the commons. So if I use the commons, I would have to pay for using the commons. So everybody else who's using the commons, needs to pay for that. So it's tax systems are an achievement of our economy, but the way they are operating is probably not the right thing. So the second thing that I would like to keep is definitely also markets, because I do think that markets are really, I would also keep a certain degree of competition, because I do think excellence is absolutely important for innovation, for development, etc. And that certain degree of, I would say, Stuart, competition is extremely important. So I would like to keep this. And again, I would like to change markets because markets need to be much more guided, because at the moment, particularly in the financial world, we have markets that are totally and utterly crazy, and they're really not helping us. And the third that I would like to keep is also the principle of social welfare, which is in a way or not, I mean, like in very strongly capitalist societies, there isn't much social welfare. In social market economies, there is more welfare, social welfare. I would like to keep that, but relook at it and also see, what are the leverage points, what are the screws that need to be adjusted, so that they do the job that they actually need to do, and that is distributing wealth in the society, because that is absolutely crucial for the future. So these are my 3 takes.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm suggesting that Clara and Joanna, maybe we could start with that question when we start the second breakout round in about 10 minutes from now. So at 6:20 for us, 10 minutes for you from now. And we could take the break in between to translate and go for that question. Yes? Great. Thank you so much. Then we will take a short break and see you again in about 10 minutes.
在现有的这个经济中保持不变的，我觉得是在现有的经济当中，事实上的话呢，
鼓励，
就是我觉得被鼓励的部分吧，就是说现有的经济当中，我们会看到说，大多数时候我们还是愿意去鼓励公平的。那我认为就是这种鼓励是可以持续延续下去的。第二呢
OK， 你说的实际上是这种市场经济，对不对？市场经济里面的这种公平竞争。
这就是我觉得这个地方我们要跟他们有一个前提的预设，就是我们所面对的这个市场经济跟他们所面对的那个充分自由的市场经济是不一样的。我想讲的是，事实上在中国，就是政府是鼓励商业的，这个鼓励，对吧？我们中间有这个鼓励，其实政府是很支持商业发展的。第二个，我认为就是说，我们的体验，就我们虽然说改革开放40年，对吧？因为刚才上一趴大家也谈到的政府跟大众之间，就是政府跟商业之间的这个 barrier 困难的地方。但从我的角度上来讲，这恰恰是就是之前 Petra 他的那个lecture 里面，他有讲那个自由经纪人，国外的充分自由经济，但我们的的反馈和我们的经验证明，就是政府适当的对于经济的这种 moderate 调整，其实这个部分是我们愿意去接纳的。
OK， 好的
OK，
你翻译好吧？
好吧，我觉得2个就可以了，就是我认为是OK。
So let me translate for Joanna. Of course, we were talking in the context of the economy situation in China. So 2 things she would like for us who are working in China to keep is, number 1, is in general, the government is encouraging the economy to go up, to grow. So that kind of encouragement from the government, she would like it to be kept. Number 2 is the moderation or the regulation that the government is playing, the role the government is playing as a facilitator or the controlled regulation from government that is currently already there in the market. She would like that part to be kept as well. So that's her response to the question. And she actually have some questions during the break she discussed with me. She actually have some discussions she would like to start, if it is possible, for the second session.
Absolutely, very welcome.
Okay, Joanna, 我帮你翻译刚才你在课间问的那个问题，好不好？作为这次课开始。All right, let me just kind of share what she discussed with me. This is a very big question she has in her mind. And also, let's not take it for granted that that every economy from every country is the same. For example, maybe China is at a very different stage of economic development compared with Germany or with other European countries. But this question could be universal. Her question is, regardless of ideology, regardless of economic development stages, how people's value is defined in the context of economic system. For example, people are paid on with hourly wages. There are minimum payments for hours, for every job, for positions. What are the big assumptions behind that calculation? This might lead to a totally new definition of work, of economic model, of how governments would be involved or how government would be engaged in economic activities. So what are the big assumptions behind that, behind the valuation of human resources, of human as a resource, or as the active part of economic activities? Would like to hear your thoughts.
And that invitation goes out not only to Dr. Künkel, but to all our contributors today. So please feel free to share your thoughts.
I'll try to make a first answer. So the assumption that is made here in Western Europe where I live is that in general, that the market is the best judge of what is the fair price of work, and that supply and demand. And of course, if you believe that, and that it is difficult or inefficient to have a third party, for example, a government, that's the vision here, that a third party, such as the government, would regulate something, would regulate supply and demand. And I don't know very much about China, but I understand that that's not the same hypothesis in China. But I think that the real question, well, not the real, the extra question is, how do we measure the value of things that don't have immediate economic value, such as a woman raising, or a grandparent, or a grandparent raising their grandchild, for example? Does that have a real economic value? In Western society, we are not able to give it a value. But for me, this is an issue.
Okay, thank you. Let me translate. So Joanna, Excel 有一个回答关于刚才那个关于人的价值如何定义的问题。他讲到的话，当然在西方最重要的一个定义者呢，就是市场，供求关系来做这个定义。他认为可能在这个，比如说他认为在中国也许不是这样子的，也许是政府来定义。那这部分我觉得你可以给一些你的想法啊。他认为在政府来定义的话呢，就可能是低效的，是无用的，也是不对的。当然，他也有一个问题是说，有一些可能没有直接商业价值的工作是怎么来定义的？比如说，祖父母来带孩子，那这个部分该怎么来定义？他也没有答案。对，
其实他回答的第二部分刚好就是我们在讨论的嘛。对，你有知道，其实我们在社区里讨论就是这一部分。我觉得在中国，其实尤其是像深圳这个城市，它也是充分市场化的。但我们走到了一个我认为有一个重要的点，就是我们人类跟 AI 这个技术共存，还要去 share 这个就是未来的这个等于说是资源分配的问题。所以我是在这个就是这个阶段去问出这个问题。事实上，我觉得以我的体验，我觉得深圳目前的这个 AI 智能化的这个发展速度，还有物联网跟互联网的发达程度是不会比欧洲差的。 那在这样的一个程度上，我们更要 focus 的是作为人 human being 本身它的这种价值的部分。我恰恰想要探讨的就是非机器替代的，就是我认为未来的不管是未来也好，欧洲它也会面临这个问题，市场中有一部分东西会被 AI 或者是其他的东西替代的时候，作为人本身的那个存在价值，我们是否能够找到那个算法？
Okay, so thank you, Excel, for your comments. So Joanna would like to share that number one, she totally agree with you. And both Joanna and I, we were in Shenzhen. This is a very marketized city, so supply and demand determines absolutely the value of things. But what she focuses on is more looking to the future. We have a very important labor now in the economic system, which is called artificial intelligence. And AI or this kind of robot is going to be playing a bigger and bigger part of our economy. So what her question is really around that. How, or maybe it's something we can imagine, but maybe we need to start to think about how human being is part of the economy, how the value of real human being, our skills, our emotions, our intelligence can be valued comparing with the values of those artificial intelligence, those machines, those robots. So how real human beings can be valued, calculated in terms of, payments, in terms of those things in the economy. So we need to think about that.
Yeah. May I pick something up?
Yes, please.
Well, thank you first, first of all. So you asked about the big assumptions, and then I heard the words human resources. And I think the idea of human resources is one of the biggest assumptions ever. Because I think when we transited the words human resources, we also make room for artificial means. Because we live in a world where human resource becomes means to create means, namely profit and growth. Where I think that maybe can connect to even AI and the idea of automation, that we need to focus much more on the quality of life instead of. And my question would be then how to value that even more and drive more towards that instead of exploiting means, namely HR or human resources, for create new means, profit and growth. So instead of, I would focus on life enhancing. And here I can maybe see the connection to AI and automation when we think of life enhancing instead of destroying our habitat.
So Dominik 的一个意见呢是说，当我们在说 human resources 的时候，它还是一个非常重要的一个方法来去形成这个 profit and growth， 形成利润和成长的。那他更倾向于讨论 AI 是在一个什么样的背景之下呢？是把 AI 放成是一种就是如何让我们的人类的生活变得更加的有活力，更加的丰盛，在这个背景下来讨论这个呢可能更是我们这种从经济的角度可以去关注的一个话题，一个角度。
So if I may jump in with an idea, I find it quite interesting, Joanna, when you said value, because the question is what do you mean with value? Is it monetary value? Is it something that can be calculated, or is it something that is a common understanding of how people act? Or is it something, like you related to, Dominik, you related to quality of life. Yeah? So, and so the term value has quite different connotations. And what I find interesting is that the idea that let alone the term human resources, has made humans exploitable, right? Because your resources can get exploited, and they can get put to use, etc. So and you take resources in order to do something with the resources in order to have an outcome, and a product, or whatever, a service, etc. And so, as I said before, this is coming from a very extractive mindset. And it doesn't mean that we need to abolish our production lines, or whatever we have. But unless we change that, really radically change how we look at human beings, so that the core element is that not everything, some things we do can be valued in monetary terms that can be calculated, but not all things that we are and that we value about ourselves and others can be calculated. So what I think is very important, if we talk about life economies as a new North Star, then the two really crucial questions: does what I do or produce, or the service that I render, does it contribute to life? Is the first question. And the second question is, does what I do harm life? And these two questions I need to be able to answer. And of course, they are contextualized, because not everybody is able, with every economic action, to look at the entire world and all implications. But today, a lot of implications are already known, and there are standards for it, and lots of things where, and we may need to go further. But these two questions are actually absolutely clear. And the moment you ask these two questions, you start setting frames for markets. We don't need to abolish markets, because they have a dynamic that we really need in that way, that actually are alive, because they, markets is about training, and trading is about people's knowledge and skills and products and ideas, etc. And so beautiful, wonderful. But the question is, what are the frames that we set for markets to be self-organized? And that's quite interesting, because that also takes us back to leadership, because a good leadership actually sets the frame for self-organization. And if the frame isn't properly set, the self-organization cannot really happen. So you can't really develop leadership at all levels. So if we transfer this to markets, something similar needs to happen. We need to have very clear guiding questions for self-organizations. And two of the guiding questions are, does it contribute to life? And that needs to be contextually defined. Or does it harm life? And that needs to be contextually defined, but also has a global outlook.
So Joanna，我翻译一下给你听哈，就是刚才这个发言呢是讲到，比如说我们如果把人看成要去定义它的价值，定义它的这个 value 的话呢，我们在一定程度上面来讲，就是把人看成了是个可以被剥削的了。就这个问题背后呢，就有可能有一个假设，就是人是可以被它的价值是需要被定义的。如果是这么来看这个人类的话呢，也许是一个不太确定的。不一定是要这么来看的。所谓价值定义的，你这样讲的是说从钱的角度呢，还是从生活质量的角度呢，还是什么样的一个角度？我们可能要调整这个视角。还有就是我们也要看一看，是不是有些东西是不可以被评估的，不可以被定义，这个价值不可以被定义的。所以我们如果在做这个 economy 的时候呢，不妨要问自己两个问题，这两个问题是可以去检验我们的这个是不是一个让生活更丰盛的这个 economy 的一个基本条件。第一个问题就是，我们做的这个事情是不是对生活是行善，是不是对生活是好的，对生命是好的。第二个问题就是我们有没有去伤害这个生命。所以就是我们如果要，比如说我们举个例子，我们如果看这个经济的话呢，不妨是去看一看，说有没有可能我们去设定一个 frame， 一个框架。在这个框架，我们设定一个框架之后，这可能是从一个政府角度来看哈，我的一个理解，就设定这个框架之后呢，市场可以自行去运行，自组织，就是我们只需要设定框架，而市场可以去自组织，然后在这个自组织状态之下，去看看所做的事情是不是对生命是好的。是不是有伤害到生命 ？Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Künkel.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Künkel. 我觉得这个我们今天的这个沟通呢，可能就是说大家建立的这个共识跟背景还是 不太够，不太充分。所以
我感觉就关怀
然后那个就是说问一个具体的问题吧，就是在昆克教授他的那个指南针里面有一个 caring， 就是关怀，然后就是我想知道一下关于这个关怀目前的这种不管是叫市场化呀，然后或者就是说他们在就是做这个模型的时候，关怀这件事情，他们是就是怎么构建这个关怀，就等于说关怀市场化这个价值框架的吧，就是再细一层，因为在他的这个 PPT 里面是看不到这一层的，就是关怀 economy 这件事情。
So, Dr. Künkel, Joanna has a particular question around caring in the life enhancing activities. We talked a lot about putting caring into the new economic system. So the specific question is how caring would be successfully recognized by the market. That component, the caring component, the component of caring, how that could be recognized and embraced by the market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question, Mrs. Liu and Clara. And maybe could I suggest that we do a round of the participants to ask actually everyone about their thoughts about the question, how the aspect of caring could be integrated?
Yes.
You hit my knowledge threshold. I don't know.
Let's brainstorm potentially, because some ideas might be there in your brains. Stefan.
Yeah, there is a difficult assumption beneath that the market is self-organizing principle. I think you said, Petra. Caring. So, if I understand market as a concept correctly, which might be complete off, there must be someone in demand and someone who offers. Then there is a market. The one between demand and offer, they are negotiating in a way about the, let's say, value. Whatever the value is, might not be money, can be valued in a sense of appreciated. And I'm not sure if in the question of caring, the market is the right conceptualization for valuing in a sense of appreciation of caring. Why? First, I think it's difficult to grasp it in market principles, and second,
but isn't there a high demand for caring, Stefan?
Yeah. And there is now I want to provoke you. And there is a high demand of love, which is very close to caring. So is market the right conceptualization for love?
No,
I doubt it.
And I would add, I mean, I can sell to you a tractor with a lot of caring. Caring can be many things. I can sell you a tractor. I could sell you my consulting services with a lot of caring. How do I begin to monetize that? I mean, what does it mean, caring? I don't. If it's a service like taking care of old people or taking care of children, that's a service which has a lot of caring. But caring for me is something that we can do in everything. My short provocative answer.
I think a definition of caring is helpful. What is caring?
Yep, potentially in the context that Joanna was referring to, in the context of her business, which is a neighborhood circling business, caring for the people in the environment, having so-called friend experts, so to speak, where it's about helping, but also about caring for each other, if I got that correctly.
That's right.
That's right.
So let me jump in with an example that is an old example, but that may be also a new example. You probably, I don't know if you know that almost in all cultures there is a system of putting in money so that people can pay funerals, or putting in money so that people can pay for something else, etc. So it is like in Africa that's pretty widespread, but that has existed in all other cultures. So you basically say some if risks are totally individualized, that is not good. So we put money together, and then somebody who needs a funeral or somebody needs an investment can take it out. So that is a principle that for me is very old, and it's a market principle, because there is a demand for something and there is an offer for something, like but there's a negotiation between that collective offer and the individual interest or the individual need. And then there is the reliability of paying in over a long time. And so that is existing, and humankind, kind of developed with that system. And very, very similar are systems that are related to the commons, kind of land commons, kind of taking care of land together and making sure, all our animal can graze there and take it off. And there's lots of scientific writings on that, when it functions and when it doesn't function. So, but these are market principles because it is something about a demand and an offer, but it functions completely different from our neoliberal free market system. So what I'm saying is, the moment we bring in the issue of care and want care to be recognized in markets, so we need to go back to commons, we need to go back to common values, we need to go back to creating conditions that help markets act in a way that it is to the benefit of everybody. So the market as such is not either good or bad. It's fine. It can exist in the commons, but it's like the frame, that speaks to care. And what is so important is that in our, at least modern societies, I don't know, in Germany, that's very strongly the case. Care in terms of also health, like health care, has been so completely commoditized that we are actually moving away from the original idea of care and healthcare and who pays for that. Because in principle, we do have these systems. The entire health insurance is a system like that. Everybody pays in so that somebody, if they really get very sick, they can take out the money. And so it does exist, but it's probably one of the things that need to be shifted in a way and be guided in a different way.
I think Robert already got very enthusiastic.
Yes, regards the comments about the market, I'm completely underlining that what Petra said. I'd like to add some very personal things. So I do own with my mother a care business for elderly and handicapped people. So I know what's going on, and what I like to make transparent, and what maybe is helpful to understand the whole thing, is that what Petra said is we have a market side of care and we have an emotional side of care. So what we want with care, and that's the initiative I want to bring forward to reflect about what we are defining care. If I ask the employees in the company what are the customers or the patients mostly want from them, is sit there, have time, and listen. And that's the emotional part. But this is in conflict with the market part. So this is the question we can raise to say, how do we combine those things? How do we run a business, because it is a business, that we care for the need of people who are in need, who's changing the diapers and so on. This is just a work. And how much of the emotional part, because we are stepping into a very private area of people, how much do we allow from the market side to be with that product? That's a very interesting question.
It absolutely is. And before I invite also other thoughts on that back in, just to say that Dr. Künkel has to leave us in about 4 minutes from now, that of course I can offer all others of you to stay a little bit longer with us in this session. But you might have noticed that our panel in the beginning took a lot longer than we usually had planned. And that's why our breakouts are a little bit shorter in the aftermath, so to speak. So maybe I would just like to give the opportunity to our joiners, Dr. Künkel, to have maybe one question towards you that they potentially brought with themselves that they would like to raise here before you have to leave us. Gentlemen, anything you would like to contribute, to ask, to find out a reason why you joined the session?
So how can we join forces?
Yeah, I was also to ask, how can we stay in contact?
My question would be, I'm very much interested in how do we connect meta levels with practical levels. So what I'm really curious about is if politicians talking about, and therefore I'm assuming that you have more insights in that, if they are talking about those topics, are they really connected?
Maybe a good opportunity for a concluding statement here, Dr. Künkel.
One of my issues, I do think sometimes kind of politicians are really in the clouds, but their decisions are important, and pushing these decisions is also important. But I do think it is about the practical issues, and I strongly believe it's about bringing the practical issues together, because there are already so many prototypes of doing things differently, and creating that learning exchange would be really helpful, and really making that connection between the clouds and the ground.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So then the last point for me is to say, how can we all stay in contact? What about networking, about securing the contacts that you have made today? And my invitation absolutely is to, on the one hand, find each other on the social networks out there. On the other hand, you are very welcome to leave your names, your links to your LinkedIn profiles, for example, Twitter, etc., email addresses in the chat to share with the other participants of the session today. And I will allow for a few minutes to do that. But since you have to leave on time, Dr. Künkel, absolutely grateful to have had you here today. It has been an absolute pleasure for us. Thank you so much for joining. And thanks also to all our breakout participants right now for joining us in this session. And I'm hoping you will have a great Sunday evening and a good start into the new week as well. See you next time. See you maybe next weekend in the next conference.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you to Joanna, especially.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.